Hi everyone, and welcome back to part 3 in my series where I look at my rig rundown, system setup, walkthrough type thing. I think I explained in the first 2 parts, but I've had a number of comments asking me just how I set up my rig and how I use all this equipment to create my live jams, and I've tried to explain that, breaking it down into various different parts, starting with part 1, which looked at the sound sources. Part 2 was the effects, and I'm going to look at the looping today. I wanted to do it as one video originally, but it was just going to be too long, so hopefully breaking it down like this has been helpful or more useful to people. As I explained in the first video, obviously the audio is a little bit different because I'm just using my phone camera, and so any of the kind of instrument audio you hear is just coming from these 2 speakers and picked up by the mic, but hopefully it works for the purposes that we need it for. So today I am going to talk about how I take the signal from the instruments, the sound sources, as described in the first video, that goes into my mixing desk. I sum all of the audio voices into stereo and then bring them into my effects boxes. Again, as I discussed in the second video, so the Line 6H has effects, and then into the Walrus Audio Qui Etherealizer. All of that then comes out stereo and into my looper, which is currently the Boss RC505 mkii, and it is, I think, having tried quite a lot of them, my favourite looper, just in the way it is so quick to use, versatile and flexible, sounds great, loads of hands-on control, really fast and intuitive to get things going, and fairly deep in terms of the way you can be flexible with routing options and all the rest of it, as I would try and explain in this video. Yeah, I think of all the ones I've tried, it's probably the one that balances usability with features the best. I have tried pretty much everything else out there. Another thing I'm a big fan of, but just not quite as deep, is this, which is the Ditto X4. It's got 2 different loops, obviously rather than 5 here, but there's a bunch of other stuff it does really well, and I really like it. I just don't think it's got quite as much going for it as the RC505. I must admit that the only issues I got with this, I don't think it looks the best visually, which, you know, especially next to something like this wonderful looking thing, I'm not necessarily keen on. It's also a little bit plasticky. If I was taking it out on the road a lot, I'd be a bit worried. But in terms of its features, it's amazing. So what do I do with the looping? I mean, a lot of my stuff is based around looping. I think it's the core of my processes, and it's the thing that enables me to be doorless, I guess, for want of a better word, although it's not something that I'm particularly kind of committed to or anything like that. But just because I find it's the quickest way to work, and I think all of my workflow is about trying to get things done quickly. When I talk about in the next part of this series, the way I kind of record the audio, see, it's all about just getting things committed, recorded and moved on as quickly as I possibly can. And this allows me to do that without a DAW. So what I tend to do is just start playing with things, routing all the signal, all the sounds through my effects, and then just grabbing bits of things which I can then loop and use the faders to bring in and out. Things to point out, I do have some effects set up on this, input and output, so I think I've got an auto pan in case I want the signal moving left to right. Got a couple of different delays and a reverb for effects on the way in, and on the way out I've got a kind of, so any of the recorded audio, there's a freeze on here, there's again a couple of delays and a reverb. Don't tend to use them a huge amount because I'll come into the next video. I use my 404 for most of that kind of end of chain effect stuff. But if I haven't got this for any reason or whatever else, then they serve a purpose. But largely I just use this for capturing phrases. The effects are baked in already onto the stereo signal from my effects pedals beforehand, and I just record. I've got this set up so that each of the tracks are completely free running. They're not synced in any way to one another. So like it's a totally free setup in that sense. I can press record and it will wait until it hears a sound source, and then as soon as it does, it will start recording. And you then got that loop whenever you want, and it will immediately loop round. And then obviously that's on the fader, and I can just bring it up and down. But then if I want to do another loop, obviously time differently, etc., I can do that. Again, it will wait for hear audio before it starts. And that's a bit shorter loop. It can be. As you can see, these two loops are both running now. They're not in sync with each other, so you'll never get an exact repeat of what's being played, because the way the order runs will always be slightly different. We can keep building, this time with the subharmonic on now. And again, I just grab a phrase that I like, and that's now looping, so I can stop it playing and it's being captured here. And I can use the fader to bring it in and out. Maybe use some textures from the move. And finally, drone voice. Again, you can see how quickly you can build up the soundscape with these different voices, but then you can alter things relatively quickly by bringing things in and out of the faders, mixing on the fly, and then live playing other things over the top. And then bring them back in, drop sections out, play other bits instead. Key thing for me with this setup is that everything is coming into the stereo in, and so it gives me the flexibility to use any of my equipment. The stuff that I've talked in the first few videos, you know, I can turn on effects on and off to have the signal processed differently. I can, you know, mix and match the sound sources that are coming in, but at the end of the day, everything comes into this box and enables me to capture it with just a touch of a button. That starts looping, and then I can use the faders to bring in and out different things if you want to. I just double tap and that channel's gone, and then you can record something else over the top of that. And again, it just loops. So it's so easy just to bring things in, change ideas, do stuff differently, add some effects to it, kind of mangle the signal. Before you know it, you're going to come through with us in an ambient loop. It's a really, really amazing box. I don't see enough of them out there. I'm surprised by that. I think for someone that uses synths and likes to do stuff that's a little off-grid or whatever, there's not really a better option in my view. I have used other things, as people have seen, so I've had the Octatrack up until recently, which can do it, and it's amazing and it's so powerful, but what for me it lacks is that kind of speed of workflow. It's always got something you need to set up, and maybe that's a muscle memory thing that you get quicker with, but I always feel like there's a hurdle in there to the workflow that I want, whereas this is just super fast and out there. I feel like something like the Digitech 2 could be really close to it, but it just doesn't have that live looping thing. There's a couple more steps. I'm interested in the MPC now. MPC 3.0 is out, 3.4 now I think we're on, because I have previously had an MPC, and I think the MPC Live 2 with its different ins and outs could be potentially something that would work really well with this. But it is locked to a grid, and that's the other thing. This gets you that freedom just to kind of do loops that don't sync with each other, which then keeps your kind of piece of music moving forward, because obviously everything's interacting and swirling at different times, which is something I'm a big fan of. So I think that pretty much covers my looping setup, and I would say it's probably the key part of everything. I mean, all of it does have to work together for it to work, and the instruments and then the way I use the effects and things which feed into that and allow me to capture the loops I do. But this is just such a key part of my workflow, and I don't think I could be without it at this point. So yeah, hopefully that was interesting. Any questions, sorry, on anything you've heard, please feel free to ask, and I will try and do some more explanation. That's the one. But in the meantime, thanks very much for watching, and in part 4, I will try and cover the kind of end section of this and wrap it up. Thanks, guys. See you later.